Tears streamed down Beatrice Elwood's face as she stumbled away from the small country church in Spring Creek, Wyoming Territory. 1878, her wedding dress catching on brambles and dirt, marring its pristine white fabric. The whispers and gasps of the townsfolk still rang in her ears as her intended groom, Wallace Thompson, had stood before God and everyone, and declared he could not marry her after all, not when her family's farm had just foreclosed, leaving her with nothing but the dress on her back. "A man needs a wife who brings something to the marriage," Wallace had announced coldly, his mother nodding approvingly from the front pew. Not just another mouth to feed. Beatrice had stood frozen in shock, her bouquet of wildflowers trembling in her hands as the congregation erupted in murmurs. Her parents had passed just 6 months prior to fever, leaving her to manage their struggling farm alone. The bank had finally claimed it yesterday, the very day before her wedding. She'd thought Wallace understood she was marrying for love, not money. Now she walked alone on the dirt road leading away from town, her carpetbag containing her few remaining possessions clutched in one hand while the other held up her mudded skirts. She had nowhere to go, no family left, and the coach to Cheyenne wouldn't arrive until tomorrow morning. With no money for a room at the boarding house, she would have to spend the night at the station. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Beatrice trudged along, her wedding shoes pinching her feet with every step. The station was 3 miles outside of town, and by the time its weathered wooden structure came into view, the sun was beginning to set, painting the vast Wyoming sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. As she approached, she noticed a man sitting on the station's porch, whittling a piece of wood. Beside him, a young girl of perhaps 8 or 9 years sat reading a book. The man looked up as Beatrice approached, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of her tear-stained face and bedraggled wedding dress. "Madam," he called, setting aside his whittling, "are you all right?" Beatrice hesitated, embarrassment washing over her. She must look a fright, and the last thing she wanted was to explain her humiliation to strangers. "Just waiting for tomorrow's coach," she replied, her voice hoarse from crying. She moved to sit on the bench at the far end of the porch, setting her carpetbag down beside her. The man stood, revealing his considerable height. He wore the practical clothes of a cattleman-worn denim trousers, a faded work shirt, and boots that had seen many miles. His face was weathered by sun and wind, but kind, with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. "Owen Quinn," he introduced himself with a slight tip of his hat. "And this here is my daughter, Lily." The little girl looked up from her book, her eyes curious. "Why are you wearing a wedding dress, Miss Lily?" Owen chided gently. "That's not polite to ask." Beatrice swallowed hard. "It's all right," she said, though it wasn't. "There was to be a wedding today, but it didn't happen." Owen's expression softened with understanding. "I'm sorry to hear that." He glanced at the darkening sky. "Station master's gone home for the night, won't be back till morning when the coach comes. You planning to wait here all night?" Beatrice nodded, trying to maintain her dignity. "I have nowhere else to go." Owen exchanged a look with his daughter, who nodded eagerly as if they'd communicated silently. "We have a wagon," he said. "Our ranch is about 5 miles from here. We've got a spare room, and I promise you'd be safer and more comfortable there than spending the night alone at the station." Beatrice hesitated. She didn't know this man, but there was something trustworthy in his open face. Besides, what choice did she have? The night would be cold, and she had heard tales of unsavory characters who sometimes loitered around the stations after dark. "I wouldn't want to impose," she said weakly. Lily hopped down from her seat and approached Beatrice. "It's no imposition, miss. Pa makes the best flapjacks for breakfast, and I can show you my kittens." Owen smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "What do you say?" "We can bring you back tomorrow in time for the coach." Something in his gentle manner broke through Beatrice's last defenses. Fresh tears welled in her eyes as the kindness of these strangers contrasted sharply with Wallace's cruelty. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm Beatrice Elwood." Owen helped her into their wagon, where Lily immediately sat beside her, chattering about the new litter of kittens born in their barn last week. As they pulled away from the station, Beatrice caught Owen watching her in the fading light, his expression unreadable but somehow comforting. The Quinn ranch was modest but well kept, with a sturdy two-story house, a large barn, and several outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, and a small vegetable garden flourished beside the house. As they pulled up, two border collies ran out to greet them, barking excitedly. "This is home," Owen said simply as he helped Beatrice down from the wagon. "It's not much, but it's ours." Inside, the house was warm and inviting, with handmade furniture and colorful quilts that spoke of a woman's touch from years past. Owen showed Beatrice to a small bedroom, explaining that it had belonged to his wife, Caroline, who had passed away when Lily was just 4. "You can wash up here," he said, showing her a basin and pitcher. "There are some of Caroline's clothes in the trunk if you'd like something else to wear. Dinner will be ready soon." Left alone, Beatrice carefully removed her ruined wedding dress, folding it with trembling hands. She washed away the tears and dirt from her face and arms, then opened the trunk Owen had indicated. Inside were simple, practical dresses that spoke of a woman who had lived a hard-working life on the frontier. She selected a blue calico dress that looked close to her size and changed quickly. When she emerged, she found Owen in the kitchen, stirring a pot of stew while Lily set the table. "You look nice," Lily said brightly. "Pa says I look like my mama did, so maybe you do too, a little bit." Owen glanced up and something flickered in his eyes that made Beatrice's heart skip. "The dress suits you," he said simply, then turned back to the stew. During dinner, Beatrice found herself telling them her story about losing her parents, struggling with the farm, and finally Wallace's public rejection. Owen listened intently, his jaw tightening when she described the scene at the church. "Some men aren't worth the ground they walk on," he said when she'd finished. "You're better off without a man who'd treat you that way." "But now I have nothing," Beatrice admitted. "No home, no family, barely enough money for the coach fare to Cheyenne where I don't know a soul." "What will you do there?" Lily asked, concerned. Beatrice shrugged helplessly. "Find work, I suppose, a shop perhaps, or as a housekeeper." Owen was quiet for a moment, seeming to wrestle with a thought. Finally, he spoke. "We need help around here. Lily's getting old enough for more schooling than I can give her, and the ranch keeps me busy from sunup to sundown. If you'd consider staying on for a while, just until you decide what you want to do, we could offer room and board, plus a small wage." Beatrice stared at him in surprise. "You hardly know me." "I know you've had a hard day," he replied, "and I know what it's like to be alone with nowhere to turn." He glanced at Lily. "We both do." That night, lying in the bed that had once belonged to Owen's wife, Beatrice found herself considering his offer. She had planned to try her luck in Cheyenne simply because it was the closest city. But the prospect of staying here, in this peaceful home with the kind man and his sweet daughter, was tempting. It would give her time to heal, to plan her future more carefully. In the morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Lily's laughter drifting up from downstairs. She dressed quickly in another of Caroline's dresses, a simple brown one suitable for work, and made her way to the kitchen. Owen stood at the stove, flipping flapjacks just as Lily had promised, while his daughter set the table. They both looked up when Beatrice entered, and their welcoming smiles made her decision for her. "If your offer still stands," she said, "I'd like to stay for a while." The relief on Owen's face was unmistakable. "It stands," he said. "Welcome to the Circle Q, Miss Elwood." The days that followed fell into a rhythm that soothed Beatrice's wounded heart. She took over the household duties, cooking and cleaning with a competence born from years of running her family's home. She also began teaching Lily her letters and numbers more formally, discovering the girl was bright and eager to learn. Owen was often out from dawn until dusk, working the cattle or mending fences, but he always returned for dinner, his face lighting up when he saw the table set and Beatrice and Lily waiting for him. In the evenings, They would sit on the porch, watching the sunset while Owen told stories of his cattle drives or Lily practiced reading aloud. As spring turned to summer, Beatrice found herself thinking less and less about Wallace and her humiliation. Instead, she thought about the way Owen's eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how gentle his rough hands could be when he helped her from the wagon or passed her a cup of coffee. One evening in early July, Beatrice sat on the porch shelling peas while Owen mended a bridle nearby. Lily had gone to bed exhausted from a day of helping round up strays with her father. "She adores you," Owen said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Lily, I mean," Beatrice smiled. "The feeling is mutual. She's a wonderful child." "She hasn't had a woman's influence since Caroline passed," Owen continued, his voice careful. "I've done my best, but—" "You've done wonderfully with her," Beatrice assured him. "She's kind, thoughtful, and brave, all qualities I'm sure she's learned from you." Owen set aside the bridle and looked at her directly. "I'm grateful you stayed, Beatrice, more than I can say." The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I'm grateful you offered," she replied softly. "I don't know what would have become of me otherwise." "I think about that too," he admitted. "The thought of you alone in Cheyenne." He shook his head. "Providence brought you to that station that day." Their eyes held for a long moment before Owen cleared his throat and stood. "It's getting late. I should turn an early start tomorrow." As he passed by her chair, his hand briefly touched her shoulder, a gentle, fleeting contact that sent warmth spreading through her body. "Good night, Beatrice." "Good night, Owen," she replied, remaining on the porch long after he'd gone inside, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast Wyoming sky. The following week brought excitement to the ranch as preparations began for the Independence Day celebration in town. Beatrice baked pies and bread for the community picnic, while Lily decorated their wagon with ribbons and bunting. "You'll come with us, won't you?" Lily asked Beatrice as they worked. "Pa says there'll be music and dancing." Beatrice hesitated. She hadn't been back to Spring Creek since her wedding day, and the thought of facing the townspeople, especially Wallace and his family, made her stomach churn. Owen, overhearing as he came in from the barn, seemed to read her thoughts. "We don't have to go if you're not comfortable," he said. "We could have our own celebration here." His consideration touched her deeply. "No," she decided, "I can't hide forever. Besides, I wouldn't want Lily to miss the festivities." On the morning of the 4th, they loaded the wagon with food and blankets. Beatrice wore her best dress, a green calico that had belonged to Caroline but that she'd altered to fit her slimmer frame. Owen, usually in his work clothes, had put on a clean shirt and his good boots, and had even trimmed his beard. "You look mighty fine," he told Beatrice as he helped her into the wagon, his hand lingering on hers a moment longer than necessary. The town square was decorated with flags and bunting, with tables set up for the potluck dinner and a wooden platform for the band. People mingled in small groups. Children ran playing games, and the smell of barbecue filled the air. As they set up their blanket and placed their food contributions on the communal tables, Beatrice was acutely aware of the curious glances and whispers directed her way. She held her head high, determined not to show how much it affected her. "Beatrice?" A familiar voice called, and she turned to see her former friend, Martha Collins, approaching hesitantly. "I didn't know you were still in the area. We all thought you'd gone to Cheyenne." Before Beatrice could respond, Owen stepped to her side, his presence solid and reassuring. "Miss Elwood has been helping out at our ranch," he said, his tone pleasant but with an underlying firmness that suggested he wouldn't tolerate any unkindness toward her. Martha's eyes widened slightly as she looked between them. "Oh, well, that's wonderful," she smiled, genuinely this time. "It's good to see you, Beatrice, truly." As Martha moved away, Beatrice felt Owen's hand at the small of her back. "All right?" he asked quietly. She nodded, surprised to find it was the truth. "Yes, thank you." The day progressed pleasantly, with good food and better company. Lily ran off with friends her own age, occasionally returning to check on her father and Beatrice. Several of Owen's rancher friends came by to say hello, treating Beatrice with friendly respect that gradually eased her tension. It was late afternoon when Beatrice spotted Wallace across the square, his arm around a young woman she recognized as the banker's daughter. They were laughing together, apparently untroubled by memories of his public rejection of Beatrice just months before. Owen followed her gaze. "Would you like to leave?" Beatrice considered it, then shook her head. "No, I'm having a nice time." And to her surprise, she meant it. The pain of seeing Wallace was there, but duller now, more like the memory of pain than the sharp sting it had once been. As the sun began to set, the band struck up a lively tune and couples moved to the cleared area before the platform to dance. Lily appeared, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Pa, you should dance with Miss Beatrice," she declared. "You always said you were a good dancer before Mama died." Owen looked embarrassed. "Lily, Miss Beatrice might not want to." "I'd love to," Beatrice interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. "If you'd like to, that is." The smile that spread across Owen's face was answer enough. He led her to the dance area, placing one hand respectfully at her waist while taking her hand with the other. "It's been a while," he warned. "I might be rusty," but he wasn't. As they moved together to the music, Beatrice discovered that Owen Quinn was indeed a fine dancer, leading her confidently through the steps of the country reel. When the music slowed to a waltz, he drew her slightly closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're full of surprises, mister." "Quinn," she said, breathless from both the dancing and his proximity. "So are you, Miss Elwood," he replied. His hand was warm against her back, and she could feel the strength in his arms as he guided her around the floor. "I never expected to find someone like you waiting at that station." From the edge of the dance floor, Lily watched them with a satisfied smile, as if seeing a plan come to fruition. As darkness fell, lanterns were lit around the square, casting a golden glow over the festivities. The band played on, but Owen and Beatrice eventually made their way back to their blanket, where Lily had fallen asleep, exhausted from the day's excitement. "I should get her home," Owen said, gently lifting his daughter. "Would you mind gathering our things?" On the ride back to the ranch, Lily slept between them on the wagon seat, her head resting against Beatrice's arm. The night was clear, with stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. Neither Owen nor Beatrice spoke much, but the silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken thoughts and possibilities. At the ranch, Owen carried Lily to her bed while Beatrice put away the remaining food and blankets. When he returned to the kitchen, he found Beatrice standing by the window, gazing out at the moonlit yard. "Thank you for today," she said without turning, "for standing beside me. It meant a great deal." Owen moved to stand beside her at the window. "You don't need anyone to stand beside you, Beatrice. You're stronger than you know." She turned to look at him then, finding his face closer than she'd expected. "Even the strongest person needs someone sometimes," she said softly. His eyes searched hers for a long moment before he reached up to gently touch her cheek. "Beatrice," he began, his voice rough with emotion, "I know you came here with nothing but heartache, and I don't want to rush you or presume anything. But I need you to know that having you here these past months has brought life back to this home and to me." Beatrice's heart pounded in her chest. "Owen, you don't have to say anything," he assured her quickly. "I just wanted you to know that whenever you decide what you want to do next, there's a place for you here. Always." The sincerity in his voice moved her deeply. This was not a man like Wallace, who measured a woman's worth by what she brought to a marriage. This was a man who saw her for who she was and valued her for it. "I think I already know what I want," she whispered, and then, gathering her courage, she leaned forward and pressed her lips gently to his. Owen froze for a moment in surprise before his arms came around her, pulling her closer as he returned her kiss with a tenderness that made her eyes sting with tears. When they finally drew apart, both were breathing unsteadily. "I never thought I'd find love again," Owen admitted, resting his forehead against hers. "After Caroline died, I thought that part of my life was over. Then you walked up to that station in your wedding dress, looking so brave despite your tears, and something inside me recognized you. I was so broken that day, Beatrice said, her hands resting on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I thought my life was over before it had really begun, but now I see it was just beginning in a way I couldn't have imagined. The summer passed in a haze of hard work and quiet joy. Beatrice and Owen's relationship deepened, growing from friendship into something more precious with each passing day. Lily blossomed under Beatrice's care, her reading improving rapidly and her natural curiosity encouraged by Beatrice's patient teaching. By August, the three of them had settled into a rhythm that felt like family. They worked together during the day, Owen with the cattle, Beatrice with the house and garden, and Lily helping wherever she was needed. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, talking about their day or planning for the future. It was on one such evening that Owen took Beatrice's hand as they watched the sunset, Lily having gone inside to feed her kittens. "I've been thinking," he said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "School starts next month and Lily should attend regularly this year." Beatrice nodded. "She's certainly ready. Her reading has come along wonderfully." "That means she'll be in town most days," he continued, "and I was thinking it might be nice if she had a proper mother to come home to." Beatrice's breath caught as Owen reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. Opening it, he revealed a simple gold band with a small pearl set in the center. "This was my mother's," he explained. "I've been carrying it around for weeks now, waiting for the right moment." He took a deep breath. "Beatrice Elwood, I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your gentle way with Lily, and 1,000 other things I discover about you every day. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears filled Beatrice's eyes as she looked at the man before her, so different from Wallace in every way that mattered. Owen Quinn had offered her shelter when she had nowhere to go, respect when others had humiliated her, and now love when she'd thought herself unlovable. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Owen, I will marry you." His face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms for a kiss that promised a lifetime of happiness. The news of their engagement spread quickly through the area, met mostly with good wishes, though there were a few raised eyebrows at the speed of their courtship. But as Owen told Beatrice when she worried about what people might think, "When you know, you know," and I knew from that first day. They were married in late September in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with only close friends in attendance. Lily served as Beatrice's maid of honor, beaming with happiness as she watched her father marry the woman who had already become a mother to her in all the ways that mattered. Beatrice wore a dress of ivory silk that Owen had ordered all the way from Cheyenne, not a wedding gown like the one she'd worn on that terrible day months ago, but a practical, beautiful dress she could wear again for special occasions. In her hair, she wore wildflowers that Lily had gathered that morning. As they exchanged vows under the great oak tree in the yard, with the mountains in the distance and the ranch spread out around them, Beatrice marveled at how differently she felt from her, almost wedding to Wallace. There were no doubts in her heart now, no worries about whether she was making the right choice. There was only certainty and a deep, abiding love for the man who had found her at her lowest moment and helped her rise again. "I promise to love you through all seasons," Owen vowed, his voice steady and sure. "To stand beside you in joy and in sorrow, to build a life with you that honors the gift we've been given in finding each other." "I promise to love you with all that I am," Beatrice replied, her eyes never leaving his. "To be your partner in all things, to care for you and Lily as my family, and to never take for granted the second chance at happiness we've found together." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Behind them, Lily clapped her hands in delight and their friends cheered. But Beatrice hardly heard them, lost in the wonder of this moment of becoming Mrs. Owen Quinn, of finding home and family when she'd thought both were lost to her forever. The celebration afterward was joyful but simple, with a feast prepared by friends and neighbors, music from a local fiddler, and dancing that lasted well into the evening. As darkness fell, lanterns were lit around the yard, casting a warm glow over the festivities. Late in the evening, as the party began to wind down, Beatrice found herself standing with Owen at the edge of the yard, his arm around her waist as they watched their friends and neighbors enjoying themselves. "Happy?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. "When I walked away from that church in my ruined wedding dress, I thought my life was over. I never imagined that just a few hours later I would meet the man I was truly meant to love." Owen pulled her closer. "I believe Caroline had a hand in bringing you to us," he said quietly. "She always told me that if anything happened to her, she wanted Lily and me to be happy. I think she guided you to that station that day." Beatrice leaned her head against his shoulder, touched by his words. "Then I'm grateful to her too." Lily came running up to them then, her face flushed with excitement. "Pa, Mama," she called, the new title for Beatrice falling naturally from her lips. "Mr. Johnson says we should have our first dance as a family." Owen laughed and swung his daughter up into his arms. "Does he now? Well, we can't disappoint Mr. Johnson, can we?" The three of them made their way to the center of the yard where their friends had formed a circle around them. As the fiddler played a sweet, slow tune, Owen set Lily down and took one of her hands while Beatrice took the other. Together, they danced in a small circle, a family united by love rather than blood. Looking from her new husband to her new daughter, Beatrice felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it nearly overwhelmed her. 6 months ago, she had been abandoned and alone, walking away from a church in tears with no idea where to go or what would become of her. Now she was surrounded by love, with a future spread before her as vast and promising as the Wyoming sky. The years that followed brought changes to the Circle Q. With Beatrice's careful management of the household finances, they were able to purchase additional acreage, expanding the ranch and increasing their herd. Owen's reputation as an honest cattleman grew, bringing business opportunities that allowed them to build a larger home to accommodate their growing family. For in the spring following their wedding, Beatrice discovered she was expecting a child. The news filled Owen with a mixture of joy and concern. Childbirth on the frontier was always risky, as they both knew all too well from Caroline's fate. But with the help of a skilled midwife from town, Beatrice safely delivered a healthy son they named James after her father. Lily took to her role as big sister with enthusiasm, reading to baby James and helping Beatrice care for him. As the children grew, the ranch echoed with their laughter and the sounds of their adventures. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Owen surprised Beatrice with a trip to Cheyenne, their first real vacation since their marriage. Leaving the children in the capable hands of their ranch foreman and his wife, they spent 3 days exploring the growing city, attending the theater, and simply enjoying each other's company away from the daily responsibilities of the ranch. On their last night in Cheyenne, they attended a grand ball at the city's finest hotel. Beatrice wore a beautiful blue gown that Owen had commissioned especially for the occasion, her hair styled elegantly and adorned with pearl combs that had belonged to his mother. As they waltzed across the ballroom floor, Owen pulled her close and whispered, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd made it onto that coach to Cheyenne 5 years ago?" Beatrice looked up at him, at the face she had come to know as well as her own, the laugh lines that had deepened, the beard now threaded with a few strands of silver, the eyes that still looked at her with the same wonder they had on their wedding day. "No," she said honestly. "Because this is where I was always meant to be with you and our children, building our life together." She smiled, touching his cheek gently. "Sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best if you're brave enough to keep walking forward." Owen kissed her then, right there in the middle of the dance floor, heedless of the other couples swirling around them. "I thank God every day that you walked to that station," he murmured against her lips, "and that Lily and I were there waiting." When they returned to the Circle Q, driving their wagon up the familiar road toward home, Beatrice felt a rush of contentment at the sight of the ranch spread out before them, the sturdy house, the well-kept barn, the cattle grazing peacefully in the distance. And standing on the porch, waving excitedly, were Lily and James with the foreman's wife behind them. "Mama, Pa," the children called as the wagon pulled up. "We missed you." Owen helped Beatrice down, then swept both children into his arms as they ran to meet them. "We missed you too," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "More than you can imagine." Over the children's heads, his eyes met Beatrice's, conveying without words all that was in his heart: gratitude for the family they had built together, pride in what they had accomplished, and above all, love that had only deepened with time. Beatrice smiled back at him, knowing he could read her thoughts as clearly as she could read his. From rejected bride to beloved wife and mother, her journey had been unexpected but perfect in its way. The tears she had shed walking away from the church that day had watered the soil where happiness would eventually grow. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting a golden glow over the Circle Q, the Quinn family walked together toward their home, united by a love that had begun on the day a heartbroken bride in a ruined wedding dress found a cowboy and his daughter waiting at a station, ready to offer her not just shelter for the night, but a place to belong for the rest of her life.